Alright, counterpoint video. I think that's what we'll call them now. As a response to the modern mystic, he doesn't really have a dialogue with anybody. And frankly, I think he's become quite yobbish in his behavior, his attitude. He keeps playing this game like there's only him and his little group are real thinkers about the economy and how it works, and everybody else isn't thinking, they're only reacting or some kind of bullshit. And it's kind of bullshit. Um, people are just so obnoxious. Somebody posted a comment, and I just deleted it. I said, fuck this shit. The invisible hand and all this kind of crap. And I was like, I just made a video where I talked about how, the obscenely wealthy can just drive everyone out of business. So your invisible hand is invisible in that circumstance. So if you're going to mention the invisible hand, then you're going to have to explain how the invisible hand can do anything about the advantage that somebody with more money has in a competition. And, somebody who can afford to get through the hard times or even the hiccups. They can survive all kinds of circumstances that somebody who's living their business is surviving hand to mouth is not going to survive. And that's sort of what's out there in the economy right now too. That's sort of this big picture thing, is there's all this pent up inflation in the form of all these failures that haven't failed yet. I mean, all these businesses that really are bankrupt, they're just not admitting it. And the banks don't want them to admit it, because then the banks have to admit they're bankrupt. So no one's admitting they're bankrupt. And it's just such a joke. So anyway, to this MMT stuff. So he applauded Remy because Remy's letting MMT fly through his brain. This modern monetary theory that you can just print a bunch of money and it goes into the economy and it doesn't do anything all that bad. No, it's just fucking. It's going to create inflation eventually. There's no such thing. You either delay inflation or it comes out right away, but depending on the circumstances. But it's inflation. If you put more money out than you take in taxes or you borrow, you're going to make these things less valuable. So anyway, the whole idea of this MMT crap that Nick thinks everybody will be shocked and amazed to find out is that when they pay their money in, new money comes out. Well, of course, that's why all the money now has big giant Lincolns on it and stuff. See this big giant one. So obviously the money I was using a couple of years ago isn't the money they're giving me now. So yeah, it seems quite obvious that the money going in disappears and new money comes out. Big fucking woo. It doesn't, I mean, I don't know how you're going to get anybody excited by that theory. The bottom line is the amount of cash that's actually in the economy is not dramatically, insanely been increased. I mean, the last couple of years they have increased it by like 20%. So they've printed a lot of cash, and that's very dangerous. But I mean, it was 3 trillion, whatever, 5 years ago, and now it's $5 trillion in cash. And that's all in a gigantic economy. So it's a tiny percentage of the economy is cash. A bigger percentage of the economy is the stock market, which is whatever, 15 billion, trillion, and the bond market, which is another 15 trillion in America. And that's where all this, the real inflation problem is, because all that cash, all that money, hasn't been accounted for. That's got to be paid out of the future. There is no cash to cover it. This is all the cash there is. We got $5 trillion to cover $30 trillion worth of liabilities. That's the reality. That's the inevitable inflation ocean that's going to fall on everybody. Because there's no way we're going to become $25 trillion productive, in the next 10 years or whenever this has to get all sorted out, whenever these bankruptcies are allowed to take place, when all these Targets and all these other companies finally just say, yes, okay, we're done, we're cooked, we're fried, there's no way we can't get out of our debt, we're sunk, we're buried under it. So there's a huge economy that is just built on future promises. That's the entire stock market's value. 80–90% of the stock market's value is a future promise. So if there is no future employment, if there is no future growth, that market has to crash. And when things start to crash, there will be a run on commodities. I won't even say commodities because these words are used for more than one thing. There'll be a run on resources. People are going to buy oil, and they're going to buy gold, and they're going to buy dirt. Okay? They're going to buy things that can't be ruined, that won't lose their value because they're not going to be a piece of paper. They're going to be a real hard asset. There's going to be a run for a hard asset, something that doesn't have IOU written on it somewhere. And the only thing that doesn't have IOU written on it is a barrel of oil doesn't have no IOU written on it. It's not a promise of something, it is something. And so anything that is not a something, that is a promise of something, yeah, it's going to be in big trouble. And that's where all this is going to start falling apart. And so anyway, so Nick probably concedes that point, that it's all going to go fall, it's all going to come crashing down. I think we disagree on why. And I'm going to argue that the whole reason why is because we have allowed the rich to get preposterously wealthy, to keep collecting more and more IOUs on this cash. More and more pieces of paper that say somebody owes them another piece of this stuff, a piece that we don't have, a piece that we have no way of manufacturing, a piece that we have no way of creating. Because it requires, multiples of productivity. It requires work weeks of 753 hours. Just isn't going to happen. It ain't going to happen tomorrow anyway. And I don't think the regular people are going to allow it to happen. So anyway, it's Nick's perception that somehow we're all going to become little villages and work together and all this kind of stuff, and I just don't see any of that happening. It's still a world. There's going to be nations that are going to be stronger and nations that are going to be weaker when things start crashing. So I would think the strong ones are going to try to take advantage of the weak ones. So war is a-coming. And, so all this little local crap isn't going to mean too much in that atmosphere. And this whole property rights thing really doesn't mean anything if you can't hire yourself enough thugs, to keep your property. You're not going to be able to do a John Wayne thing. In Rome, you're 7 million acres, and be able to protect it. You just aren't going to be able to do it. You're not going to build a moat gnarly enough to keep people's flaming pickup trucks from flying into your friggin' house. Technology is way past a survivable. We're going to just wall ourselves off from the zombies kind of crap. So yeah, people are going to just take stuff. It's not going to be pretty. What else? And it's all going to happen because of one reason. None of this has to crash. None of this disaster has to take place. And the only reason why it's going to happen is because a bunch of crooks, a bunch of greedy motherfuckers who wanted to own everybody and everything. And we're respecting them. We're respecting the silly loans they issued, their attempt to seduce people into living a lifestyle they had no business living. But in some respects, our economy could afford to allow them to live. This is the big joke, is that we have all of this that we have built. And we have built it, okay? I mean, these rich fuckers didn't build it. The average citizens built it. The average people built it. The Chinese built the world, all right? Their labor, their sweat. And that's a reality. And we have this. We have the stuff. And it's just if we let these stupid cunt bastard rich tell us they own it all, and they're going to try to collect it. They're going to try to collect it. They can't collect it. Okay, their 30 trillion in IOUs cannot be paid by the money we have. So and if we start printing this stuff, then your salary isn't going to mean anything. It's not going to be worth anything, and you'll be paying this $5, for a slice of bread, not a loaf of bread. Yeah, so that's the reality. But I mean, this whole MMT stuff is just bullshit. It's not some modern monetary theory. There's no theory here. It's about printing money. and whether you can get away with that. But more importantly, at least in the past, it has been a acronym for deficit spending, which wasn't just printing money, it was borrowing money. And that somehow you could borrow money forever. So that's what modern monetary theory means. It just means, oh yeah, we can live on the credit card forever. Yeah, it'll work, no problem, don't worry about it. It's just the producers, you know, that movie, you know, where you sell 5,000,000% of a play. Well, yeah, that works. Okay, you'll take in a whole bunch of money. People give you their money. They give you they'll give you $5 and say, I own 5% of the play. And so you collect 5,000,000 $5 bills. And yeah, so you're real rich at first. You got a whole big pile of money. You can produce a play. You can have some wine. You can do all kinds of shit. And you won't know there's a problem until you have to start paying people their money back plus their profit. And we can't do it. We can't do it. The economy cannot pay back the IOUs. So it has to fall. And like I said, the only thing holding it up now is a lie. Okay? Banks aren't even selling. There's houses for sale around here. And there's no for sale sign on them. I mean, they're empty. But there's no for sale sign. Why? Oh, that's right, because if the bank sells it, it has to admit it lost a huge pile of money on it. It doesn't want to lose the deed, because then it would have to take an asset that's sitting there in its bank that says it's worth $300,000 or $500,000, and all of a sudden that asset will be turned into $200,000 plus the loss on the loan itself. So they have to take both a debt loan that they know isn't going to be paid, but now it's still in there. Okay, it's an IOU that says some guy owes them $500,000. Well, they know that guy ain't going to pay. And it's tied to a deed that says the house is worth $500,000. Well, the house is actually worth $200,000. The $500,000 note isn't going to get paid, and so if the bank lets that be realized, it's going to lose $1 million. $1 million is going to come out of its reserves, and it's going to get, you know, a measly 200 back. So it's going to lose $800,000 net. So that's why that house isn't going to get sold. They'd rather pay the property taxes every year of $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 and lose that $8,000 than to have to admit they lost $800,000. And that's going on all over the fucking place, and all that crap is going to have to be liquidated eventually, and that's the inflation that hasn't hit us in the face yet. But anyway, but all this MMT crap isn't going to scare anybody. You want to scare people, just tell them that there is $40 worth of claims on this $5 bill. Okay, there's $40, $50, $60, $70. Okay, there's 70 IOUs claiming they own this $5 bill. That's the reality. You want to get scared? That's the reality. And when they start to try to claim their $5, that's when you're in trouble. So anyway. Till the next time. Sorry about the sun. Comes out a little early nowadays. Okay, until next time.